I'm showing this to give the viewer some idea of what it is I'm trying to do with the lathe. This particular piece came out of strictly what can be found in the junkyard, or like in these pieces here, the little foot pads. Those come out of an electrical junction box. And of course, those are just big nuts. And the rest of it, and this is sheet metal. And these are, I don't know what they were intended for, but they're also, everything was in the junk pile. The problem with that is, unless you have a source for a really, really good junk pile, then you're sort of stuck. So what I want to do with the lathe is to be able to take scrap, particularly rebar, and I tend to pick up a lot of threaded bar at Habitat for America outlet store. There's all kind of crazy stuff in there. Sometimes it's priced for what the item was intended to be, as opposed to me altering it and doing something else with it. So it's too expensive. Now, I've got a number of hobbies, and I'll splice in a clip here for to show you another hobby I have, which is reloading ammo. It takes a lot of time, but nowadays I could not afford to go to a gun range and practice with, when a single shot cost $1. So using fired brass that I pick up from the range and other places, then I can clean it, resize it, take out the primer, and then go in reverse. So anyway, I'm going to show you the output of that little thing and the conditions under which I work. I live in a 55 plus community down here in Central Florida in a double wide. So I've got approximately 1,100 square feet, not counting the garage, the attached shed, and the lanai. So altogether, maybe I've got 1,800 feet. One bedroom I use strictly for computer equipment. That's where I'm at making this video. So if I take away the background, you see what I'm sitting in front of, which is green screen, which allows me to put up something more pleasant than the mess in my men's den. Anyway, I'm gonna start editing this together. The one thing I've done, this was my original piece I turned, and it's 11 inches long. Now I didn't have all this sticking out. I did it in I don't know if you can see this or not, but this part right here is what I put in the chuck, and then I would flip it over and do the other side. But that's still a lot of stock hanging out. But for what I'm doing with this, since I'm not machining it to any particular size or purpose, all I want to do is get rid of the rebar look and have a clean, shiny piece of metal of various sizes. Now, in the beginning, this gave me fits, but I learned a lot along the way. Certainly when you got, whenever it's possible, to true the end up and drill it out for the live center is ideal. The other thing is, this thing started out really bent. I was really stupid trying to think I was going to get the lathe to true that much bend up. So anyway, I got ordered a 6-ton shop press and straightened it out best I could by just eyeballing it. And that made life so much simpler. Also, one of my viewers recommended that I tighten up all the jibs, so I did that. So I'm pretty pleased with what it's doing right now for my purposes. Now, if you're machining to some kind of specs for a part to go on a machine, you could disregard that. But this is, I get a lot of this threaded rod, and I can get 30, 40 pounds of this stuff for $10. And when it's cleaned up and machined, it's very nice looking. It's not very, this one's not very big, but the main challenge in doing this is when you start in the video of doing this will show you what I'm talking about. The cutting tool tends to want to follow the threads. So when it's in a thread, it goes smooth and it hits the next shoulder of the next thread and it wants to jump. Well, that's all right. It's okay. I have to be careful. I can't take off too much or I'll bind the machine up. But it does work. And as I get rid of the threads, man, the machining is a breeze. And then the last step I do is to put a file to it. And if I really wanted this shiny, I would sand it. Take a sanding belt and while it's in the lathe, put a good finish on it. Maybe even polish it, but depending on what application I ultimately use it for. But I don't know at this point. Okay, with no further ado, let me start editing this and putting it together for you. This is that piece of threaded rod that I showed you earlier in this video. And the thing to take note of here is the way it jumps when it hits the next shoulder of the thread. And so certainly at the very beginning I have to be very limited on how much metal I can take off. Once I get rid of the ridges from the threads, I can successfully do much deeper cuts. Also, I've found, particularly on the threaded portion, until I get the threads off, that is, that I can use the auto feed, but of course that was designed to cut threads. So when I get to the end, I take the auto feed off, and then I go backwards over the threads, over the length of the material by hand. And what I'm doing there is catching the places that was missed in the revolution of the feeding rod. What is the name for that? Feeding rod? Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. So you see I'm going back over it, and occasionally it'll catch where the auto feed missed a point, essentially. but still, it's using the auto feed I like to do because it's so tiresome otherwise. Because it'll take about 10 passes on this to get it where I want it to be. So here we go again. Although in this case, I'm hand feeding it. I guess that's later on in the video. The only obvious issue I haven't dealt with is the leveling. Right now it's cutting off more toward the chuck than it is toward the end, so I'm manually compensating for that because the table I've got it on can never be leveled up, the surface of it. And secondly, what I'm doing with this here doesn't have to fit any particular spec. If I need to make it a particular size, I can do that in later operation. Okay, so you see where I'm at, and what I'm trying to achieve basically is to produce some parts I can make some kind of something, animal or decorative piece or whatever. So basically I'm getting I want to get the piece where it's attractive and it's proportional. And beyond that, I weld it together. So I have to depend on washers and flat plate and other stuff for the other things. But at any rate, it will work. And as I spend more time doing it, I'm sure I'll get better at it. But this whole review has been from a perspective of a hobbyist. Nothing more. It's good. I'm having a good time. Okay. All right. If you haven't subscribed, I would appreciate it if you did. And if you click on notifications, you'll be notified on when I add videos to any of my playlists. And have a good day.